Good morning and welcome everyone to this SI&A CASBO strategic webinar. Our topic today is good governance and risk management. I'd like to introduce our presenters today. My name is Tony Shervanian, Operations Manager at School Innovations and Achievement, and I'm happy to have David Flores here with us today, CBO of Shasta Union High School District. Thank you, David, for joining us. Little housekeeping. As we get started, we'd love to hear your questions today, so you can type them in using the chat box in your webinar control panel, and in the interest of time, we will reply with answers in a follow-up email. Again, thank you for joining us today. Let's get started. Our company, School Innovations and Achievement, has really grown over the years and become a nationwide software consulting and a professional development company, but one area that we've always specialized in is mandate programs. So we're here to talk about mandates, but in a different way than we have in the past. We're going to talk about good governance as it relates to the mandate programs, and the two areas we're going to focus on is risk management and financial accountability. Let's refresh our memories on what mandates are. Mandates are really when the legislator passes a law that requires us to do something outside of educating children. The state then is required to pay for these additional costs. There are currently 42 different mandates, and the mandated cost reimbursement program is constitutionally protected. Now, the mandate program today is really viewed as a funding decision. If you remember back in the 12-13 fiscal year, the state created a second method of receiving mandate money, and that was the block grant. So it's really become a decision to either take the block grant or file mandates traditionally, and this is a decision you make every year in August. And we're being told by the state that there's not going to be an audit, and we don't have to worry about giving the money back when we take the block grant. So many districts now feel that the easier way about it is take the block grant, and they don't have to worry about anything else, which is really not the case, and that's what we're here to talk about today. While the state's saying they're not going to audit and they're not going to take the money back, what they're not telling us is that there are advocacy groups, parents, students, and teachers that could still file a lawsuit. And unfortunately, this is already happening. We have 13 districts that are being sued for not complying with the STAL Act mandate. A Central California district is being sued for not complying with the AIDS prevention instruction mandate, and an East Bay district is being hit with an $8 million lawsuit, and this one is related to child abuse and neglect reporting. So it's important to remember that when you accept the block grant, you're signing a statement saying you are complying with all 42 mandates, and in essence, you're being provided the funding to carry out these requirements. So what should a district really do? Good governance is what we need, which is about fulfilling your fiduciary responsibilities. And the two areas that we've talked about earlier are risk management, which is really having a defensible position when it comes to these mandate programs, and financial accountability. And that means as you take the block grant, it's important not to leave any money on the table, and file all costs reimbursable outside of the block grant. Also participate in all first-time claim filings. So let's take a look at risk management. Risk management is about having a defensible position in the event of a lawsuit, and there's three things you need to do. You need to have an independent third party review your programs. This would be an expert with an unbiased opinion who can really tell you where your strengths and weaknesses are. You also need to provide professional development for your staff, and this would be training your staff on what the mandate requirements are. And you also need to ensure you have the proper processes in place to carry out the mandate requirements. Here's an example of what we provide our clients as a third-party review. We review all programs by conducting process interviews. The programs are divided into the 5 categories, as you can see on the screen. A green mark next to a category means that the district's doing well. The yellow mark would mean there's a couple of areas we need to look at, and a red mark next to a category would mean that this is an area of concern that we really need to focus on that category. This next slide shows you the health and safety category and all the different mandates that are a part of that. I want to point out the notification to teachers mandate, which has really been a nationwide issue when it comes to teacher safety. And as you can see, we have the two red marks next to that mandate. Now, the notification to teachers mandate requires a district to notify a teacher when a student is suspended or expelled, and it requires them to inform a teacher of the student's past 3-year history as well. And it's not unusual for a district to have difficulty in this area. Now, let me show you how a district could be at risk when it comes to this mandate. The fact is that over 1,100 teachers are attacked every day, and this is nationwide. Now, these numbers continue to go up. They've been up almost 35% since the 2007-2008 fiscal year. So districts are really vulnerable to a lawsuit when it comes to this mandate. And I want to walk you through a scenario as it relates to this issue. Let's say that a teacher was attacked in your district and you're in that position. Here are the questions that you would be asked. First question would be, did you sign that you are in compliance with all 42 programs? And your answer would be yes. So as we talked about earlier, when you sign to participate in a block grant, you're signing an agreement saying you're in compliance with all 42 mandates. Second question would be, did the state pay you to carry out these mandate programs? And the answer to that would be yes. And the third question then would be, did you notify your teachers according to the law? And this is where your answer might be no. And now suddenly you don't have a defensible position and you might have to write a check for this case. So we want to make sure we have a defensible position when it comes to these mandate laws. Now I want to point out that this is one out of the 42 programs that could potentially be at risk. Now we went through a sample program review and uncovered a problem. The next part of having a defensible position is to provide professional training, and that's training your staff on mandate requirements. When you have position changes, turnovers, you want to make sure you keep your staff up to date on the requirements. Remember, we have new mandates that come out every year as well. We want to keep our staff up to date on those. In the past, for those of you who remember, we only had the option of filing mandates traditionally. Okay, so you had a mandate company come out either in person or on the phone, train your staff on these mandates, and we want to keep that same training as we participate in the block grant as well. Okay. And the last part of having a defensible position is to demonstrate that you have proper processes in place to carry out the mandate requirements. So after a third party would review your programs and pinpoint your strengths and weaknesses, you need them to help you improve the processes throughout your district. You also need them to document your efforts and keep backup information to prove your due diligence. All right, now we've been talking about risk management as one part of good governance. The second part is financial accountability, and there are really two opportunities to recover from the cost of these mandate programs. One is file claims outside of the block grant. The second one is participate in first-time filing of all new claims. Now here's why it's important to file claims outside of the block grant. Let's take a guess on how much money we think was filed outside of the block grant since the 12-13 fiscal year. The answer is $1 billion. And yes, that's over 13 different mandates. Now remember, this is not a part of the block grant. It's money that's owed to you. Now, although you might not see this money on your books, the state does have them on their books accruing interest as we speak. Now that $1 billion might seem like a lot of money, but we think it should have been more. And I'm going to show you what I mean in this example. The pertussis mandate was one of those mandates outside of the block grant, and we estimated the cost to be roughly around $8 million. Okay, But when first-time filing came, only 175 out of 913 eligible districts filed for this claim, okay, which is only 20%. And because of this low participation, when the state then rolled this mandate into the block grant, they only added 1.6 million instead of the 7.8 million that we estimated. So, and this is exactly what the state wants, not to be responsible for these costs, which is why it's really important that we file for mandates outside of the block grant to really protect what's owed to us. Here's a great flow chart showing you the test claim process, which is really what it takes to get the state to pay for a new program. And it's a real lengthy process. I want to point out two things. Okay, one is that a district really has to care. A district has to stop and say, well, this new law is going to cost us money and we need to get paid for it. And the second is that that district then is going to go through a year-long process, okay, spend their own money, their own resources, to really at the end ensure there's an opportunity to recover from these costs, which really benefits all districts. Okay, every district then becomes eligible to file for that new claim, but you do have to file in order to get paid for it. And I want to remind you that our predecessors from 30 to 40 years ago have really worked hard to protect this process. And here's how the costs of a new program are determined. The estimates are determined by the test claimant. Currently, we have CASBO-SI&A Unified filing a test claim on smarter balance testing, which you may be familiar with, and they're estimating this cost to be $1 billion. But the actuals are determined by first-time filing, which is, again, why it's important for us to file these claims. If you take the pertussis example that we just talked about, where only 20% of the estimates were filed, and we apply it to this scenario, the $1 billion is really going to become $200 million. And remember, this is still money that's owed to us outside of the block grant. So we're going to lose this unclaimed money this year for those districts that didn't file, okay? And in the future, when the state rolls this new mandate into the block grant, they're only going to include $200 million instead of the $1 billion. So we're really going to lose twice. And again, this is exactly what the state wants, which is why we're being told to take the block grant. You don't have to worry about filing anymore. So if you're not doing the work of filing test claims, you should at least participate in filing the claims when they come out. Here's what's coming up: the smarter balance testing that we just talked about and mandated reporter training. These two mandates, these two laws are already in the test claim process, and we have other new laws that should be reimbursable activities, cost round, LCFF, and LCAP are examples. Now remember, all new mandates are added costs, and if initial filings are low, then a low amount is going to be rolled into the block grant. Here are organizations that are on our side when it comes to the mandate program. We have CSBA Legal Alliance. This is an organization that files lawsuits anytime the state wants to mess with the mandate program. And just to let you know, they have won every lawsuit they have filed so far. Second, Education Mandate and Cost Network. This is a group of districts with school services and CASBO, and they look out for any legislation that could be a potential mandate. And they encourage districts to file a test claim when there's an opportunity. And finally, it's important to recognize districts that have done the heavy work of filing test claims. You can see their names on the screen. These are districts that have really stopped and said, this new law is going to cost us money and we need to be funded for it. Okay. Now I'd like to reintroduce David Flores, who's going to talk about his efforts with good governance at Shasta Union High School District. David?
Thanks, Tony. If you could just go to the next slide, please. So my name is David Flores. I'm the Chief Business Official for the Shasta Union High School District and been an SI&A client for many years. And our district has about 4,200 ADA. We have 3 comprehensive high school sites, 2 alternative ed sites, and we oversee 2 charters. So we have a lot of different activity going on in our district. Next slide, please. So the matter, we have continued to file traditionally rather than going with the block grant, mainly because we still see benefit in filing traditionally versus the block grant just because of the dollars, the potential dollars that are out there. And working with SI&A, with our rep in the area that we've worked with for many years, they've really been the biggest benefit I think they offer for our site with the traditional reporting is just working with our sites directly and making sure that we're filing the way we should be and not missing anything so that we're claiming as much of the dollars that we possibly can. Next slide, please. So this is when I sit annually with our rep from SI&A, this is essentially what we're looking at comparing the traditional filing versus the block grant dollars that we could get. And you can see that gap that exists. For us, we've been fortunate in the sense that our reserves have been very healthy and we haven't been caught in that cash flow pinch that I think a lot of districts found themselves in over the last 5-6 years, or at least since 2008. So that's really helped us in not having to take that block grant option and stay with the traditional filing. So that's been a benefit for us. Next slide, please. This is another one of the reports that's provided by SI&A and comparing generally how much money a site earns versus the district office. And for the most part, you can see it's a 50-50 split. For our district, our actual split is 58-42. And again, I think a lot of that is just because our SI&A reps go out to our sites and work closely with our reporters at the site level to make sure they're doing everything they should be doing and filling out their paperwork and getting it in and claiming the mandate. Next slide, please. This is another report, or another report that's in that binder when I meet with our SI&A rep. And this shows how our individual sites do compared to each other. And our high school sites are very competitive with each other, so this is something I always like to share in our cabinet meetings where we have this report so that the sites can see how they're doing compared to each other and hopefully generate some of that competitiveness that they have and get them excited and motivated to fill out those traditional mandates and keep that piece of it going. Next slide.
All right. Well, thank you, David. It's always good to hear from a CBO's perspective. Now, you've heard about how David stays on top of mandates in his district. Now, whether you take the block grant or file mandates traditionally, it's really important to have a similar plan to really train your staff and have processes in place to carry out the mandate requirements. Let's take a look at the 2015-16 mandate payments. Well, the great news is that you have a significant amount of money coming your way for the cost of mandates. There's going to be over $3.1 billion paid towards outstanding mandate claims, and this is the money that the state still owes on previously filed claims, and over $219 million paid towards the block grant. And you can see the breakdown of how the state is planning to pay on this slide. All right, and in closing, it's really important to remember that mandates are not just a funding decision, okay? You want to manage your risk and have a defensible position. You want to have a third party review your programs and provide continuous training for your staff. And financially, you want to capture all the money that is owed to you, so keep filing those claims. We feel that the state is really trying to take advantage of this situation, and we need to make sure they fund these programs appropriately. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. and a special thank you to David Flores for being a part of this presentation. If you like to have detailed analysis of your district's anticipated mandate revenue, the money that you're going to be getting in the 15-16 fiscal year, please reach out to me through an email. My name is Tony Shervanian, and you can see my email address on the screen, tonys@sia-us.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great week.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you, everyone.